Welcome. My name is Krista, and this is the fourth episode of our Female Founders in Crypto series. Today, I'm talking to Karisa Winett. She is currently the VP of Operations at NFT Genius, but she is also a crypto founder and is building her own platform. So we're going to talk about that today. She's going to give us a bit more color on what she does and how she does it, and some advice for any other aspiring founders. So with that, I'm going to hand over to you, Karisa, if you would like to give an introduction of yourself.
Absolutely. I'm Karisa Winett. I work for NFT Genius. I'm the VP of Operations. I've been in the crypto space for a little over a year and a half now, maybe a little bit longer at this point. And I think I found what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Big statement. So I guess I like to kick off with a bit of background, because you've got a very interesting story actually for your whole background. So we'll talk about that, maybe a little bit about how you got into crypto, and then talk about your business, which is really what we're here for. So if you want to just maybe give some color on like what you've done with your life up until now and your story.
Absolutely. So I started off a musician. And I wrote and I sang songs and I did all that fun stuff. And, the one thing people don't tell you about being a musician is that there's no money. Like, it's really difficult to make money. So at some point, my biggest drawback is I didn't have the ability or the knowledge to run a business. So my dad had suggested that I actually start to build, like, to work in a business, to work in a company, so that I understood like how businesses work. Because there's book learning of businesses and there's practical application of businesses. And I read a lot of books, but I never actually had practical experience. And it's vastly different. Practical experience is vastly different than what I read in books. So once I started to kind of get into business, and I started off in a tech company, I realized I really just loved the idea of business. It was a lot of problem solving. And that was kind of my middle name at some point. It didn't start off that way. I think I came off like every musician and everyone right out of college, which is, tell me what to do. Oh, I have to go figure this out on my own. How do I do that? And I had a mentor early on. It was the CTO who had hired me, who was very much so like, go figure it out. I'm like, how do I do that? And he's like, you just go do it. Go Google it, go figure it out. And at some point it became like, oh, I can just solve all these problems on my own. I can teach myself, and I can solve these problems on my own. And that's exactly what started to happen. Is the more problems that arose, the more I would just be like, oh, I'll solve it. And I would give it to him finished. And he's like, wait, you solved this problem? I was like, yeah. So we changed our whole working style from me being like an EA to me being like his other half. So our working style became what we called notify then do. A problem or something would happen. I'd be like, hey, this came in. This is the solution. Can I enact it? If an hour passed and I got no response and it was important, I was to enact my solution. If it was something that wasn't really important, I could wait a little bit longer. But if he didn't respond at all, my job was to enact the solution. The logic behind that being, he's giving me power, he's giving me the ability to solve a problem, he's getting problems solved efficiently and effectively. And if it was super urgent, everything can always be fixed. Like, you can't break anything to the detriment of the company. Everything is fixable, is how he perceived it. So
I don't know about that. All things are possible.
That is true. That's very true. But at that point in time, like, he's like, I can, if you rub someone's feathers the wrong way, like, I can smooth it over. And that was like my first taste of being more than like an EA. I was basically acting as a mini CTO by running scrums and helping with, reports and answering questions on his behalf. And most people came to me before they came to him. So like, he was the CTO, but I was still kind of like the person who had all the answers. And it was kind of like a drug. And I'm like, I want more. And it wasn't about power. It was about the knowledge. It was about being able to solve a problem and enact a solution that actively made the company work more efficiently, that actively made someone's job easier, that actually removed a roadblock and allowed someone to get from point A to point Z more efficiently, more quickly. And that made me feel so good. The problem that came with
that actually sounds like a very forward-thinking manager, because it's a big deal for him to give you that much leeway and just say, like, what was the methodology you referenced? You said notify and then
notify then do. So I would notify him that something happened and that I had the solution. Here was my solution. And he would, if it was super urgent and I didn't get back to him within an hour, I was to enact my solution. If it wasn't super urgent, like wait a couple of hours, wait 4 or 5 hours. And if he never responded, then my job was just to do it, just to get it
and
done.
Who came up with that idea? Was that like a, oh, okay, huh? Is that a known kind of management style, or is that just something that he invented?
I think that was just something he came up with. He and I read a lot of books on like management styles and working together, and I think he just kind of pieced it together from other people that had worked with him in the past as well. But that was not, to my knowledge, that was not something that, that was not something that was something that I had ever heard of. And to this day, I've never heard of it. Like, I've never heard of anyone doing this with anyone till this day. And I try to do it with everyone I work with, which is, I trust you. I hired you because you are great at what you do. And I wouldn't have hired you if you weren't great. So I'm going to say, if there's something that comes up and it's a big problem that you want my response on, just notify me of the problem and your solution. And if I have a problem with your solution, I will respond pretty quickly. And if I don't, just go do it.
That's amazing. I mean, that's great because it means that things don't get stuck with a gatekeeper. So you can just kind of move off and do stuff. That's awesome. And also it gave you the ability to actually develop the skills to make the decisions and fix things without having to kind of get somebody's approval every single time. And so where did you go from there then? So you had this great experience. You've obviously learned then some very good management skills and some good business skills. And then where did that kind of take you on your journey then through that company and various other ones?
So I went from there to a hot company, the hot sauce company. Again, very much like my previous mentor, and extremely intelligent, hardworking, and was kind enough to say, I know that you're an EA and like a chief of staff over here, but I'm going to give you the title of operations manager because a lot of those skills overlap. And I was like, great, because I need a title change because I'm having problems getting more money, getting a better title, because a lot of what I'm being put up against is, you've never done it before, so we can't do this. Right. I have never had the title of this. That doesn't mean I've never done it before. Those are two different things. And I couldn't kind of move up in my career or even kind of get acknowledged as anything other than like an executive assistant, chief of staff, because I didn't have those on my title already. I didn't have those titles in my work history already, which becomes this weird obstacle of like, okay, I've done accounting. Okay, I've done project management. I've done product management. I've run Scrum. I've written business strategies. At what point do my skills supersede the title?
Yeah.
And that was, that's always been like,
I agree. I mean, that's something that's incredibly broken about recruiting, is that your resume really just says what title you had and very little about what you're actually able to do. And so people look at, well, have you done this job before? And I think a lot of recruiters use automated systems now as well. So if they don't find the right keywords, then it's like, whereas if you work with somebody and you know them in a business, sometimes it's much easier then to bring them through that process because oh yeah, they could absolutely do that. So that's really fascinating that you've had that insight into that frustration and how that works.
Well, I mean, it's not only is it frustrating, but especially in like crypto, we have very weird keywords. So like, if I'm applying for like my particular job, what keywords would an automated system be looking for other than experience in crypto? Like, it's a very broken system. And the system doesn't take into account a multitude of things. Drive, it doesn't take into consideration people's ability to learn and educate themselves and how quickly they can teach themselves something. Like, the system, in my personal opinion, is systemically broken, and we need to fix it. It doesn't allow for upward mobility, and it doesn't allow for people to grow and evolve as human beings. It's designed to kind of keep you stagnant and complacent.
Yeah, compartmentalized basically in what you could do. So before we get to that, because we're definitely going to get to that piece where you fix it, but can you talk to me about how you found out about crypto, how you ended up working in the crypto space? Like, what was the journey there, and what excited you, I guess, about crypto?
It's a really, really boring story. So I had left. I was working for one of my really good friends at his construction job. I was just tired. I was on burnout mode. So I quit just because I was trying to save the friendship as well as to not burn out. I got offered a job by one of Sean Parker's companies. I don't know if you guys remember who Sean Parker is, but
I do, but wait, remind me, the name's familiar.
Napster.
Oh, right, of course. Yes, yes.
Yeah, so Sean Parker had invested in a company that was in the entertainment industry. I had literally just been hired. I had signed all the paperwork, and the day before I was starting, they rescinded my offer.
Oh, why?
Yeah. They didn't give me a reason. They didn't say anything. They just said, unfortunately, there's been some company changes and we have to your offer. And I broke. Now, the good news was I was always kind of a contractor, and I spent most of my life having 2 jobs because, as we all know, one job doesn't pay the bills. So I'd bartended on Friday, Saturday. So income-wise, I was fine, but I had never I had never had that happen. So I was starting to slowly sink into this depression. And so I was taking contracting jobs and I was bartending, and then COVID happened.
Sorry, I'm leaning here because I've got a cat sat on my desk that wanted to be in company, but he keeps thinking he's going to rub himself on the laptop. So
no, you're fine.
So if you see me like doing this, I'm trying to shove him outside.
I just thought you were like waving me down. You're like 5 minutes. So I didn't get that job. I'd taken a bunch of contracting jobs, and COVID happened. So I didn't have any income coming. I'd never been on unemployment before. And so I was extremely depressed. I'm not even going to sugarcoat that. I was very depressed. And all these friends talking about like cryptocurrencies and how they're making all this money flipping Bitcoin. And respectfully, you guys are all idiots. I don't understand crypto. I don't understand the blockchain. I don't understand this stuff at all. All of you guys can figure this out, there's nothing stopping me from figuring this out. Because now I need to know. Because now I'm in this weird depression, and like I'm seeing you guys just make money, and it's boggling my mind. So I'm like, I'm gonna go teach myself about blockchain and cryptocurrencies. So I took all these courses on Udemy. I started learning, and I became kind of infatuated with the blockchain, specifically that first, because I loved the concept of the transparency of it and how it works with security. It became this like fascinating thing.
I love that catchphrase, infatuated with the blockchain.
I was infatuated. I was like, this is so cool. I'm like, and then I was like, I wonder if I can build a business off of this transparency. And so I remember that's how I learn, is like I apply actions to things. So I'm like, okay, well, let me see if I can build a business based off what I learned. And I knew that cannabis was having a bunch of issues, obviously with banks not taking their money and them getting robbed. So I was like, I wonder if I can figure out how to use the blockchain and cryptocurrencies and fiat to create a marketplace that would transfer, that they could buy their, and I started to go down this road in my own brain and like writing it out and trying to build a business so I could truly understand how it worked. I got accepted into an accelerator, started working on it there, started interviewing for jobs because we're in the middle of the pandemic. So I'm like, I'll take anything because I'm on unemployment. I don't feel good about being on unemployment. I just need to do something. And I got this interview with Jeremy's, the first person who interviewed me before I got to Jeremy, which was a gentleman by the name of Jim. And he's like, I work with NFTs. Do you know what NFTs are? I'm like, kind of. Boldface lie, no clue. Kind of was my answer, because like that's not a yes and it's not a no. I was like, kind of. Not a clue. So obviously he liked me, he liked my resume. He's like, I'm gonna have you meet with Jeremy. I was like, wonderful. Totally forgot about this interview. I see on my calendar that I had an interview, because when you're unemployed, like time is no longer a thing. Days and times and showering, like these aren't things anymore. So I was like, oh crap, I have this call. And so I call him, his reception is crap. And we're trying to talk, and he's like, so do you know what NFTs are? I'm like, well, his reception's crap, and I forgot about this call, and I'm not prepared. So instead of lying, I'm just gonna be like, not a clue. He's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, I have no idea what an NFT is. I haven't even Googled what it is. He's like, well, it's a non-fungible token. He starts to kind of break down like what it is. I go, well, I know what blockchain is. I know what cryptocurrencies are. I've owned cryptocurrencies at this point. I've invested in this. I invested in like, I'm trying to remember, like at the time, like just random coins that I thought were going to take off. One of which was Elon Musk's one. I'm blanking on the name of it now.
Oh, Dogecoin.
So I made like 60K off Dogecoin and like refused to cash it out until it dropped to like 10. Because I got it when it was at like 11 cents, because I didn't know what I was doing. So I was trying to teach myself how to do things. And
I love that. You're going to upset so many people that have lost money in the crypto crash. I didn't know what I was doing. I made $60,000. It was just,
and then I lost it because I refused to pull it out, because I was like, it's like stocks, you know, they go up and they go down, but it's going to go back up. That was like my mentality on that. So I think I have like 10K left from 60K, but I invested like 2,000, so I feel pretty good.
It's still not bad. Not bad return.
Yeah, exactly. But that being said, like, Jeremy loved my candor. He loved, I guess my personality came through on the phone because I was making jokes about things. And he's like, he does this thing that I tell him I hate it. It's a cop out. And he's like, what is it? It's give me your 60 seconds spiel. And I'm like, I hate that question, because like it instantaneously, it brings my anxiety level to like, I got this, to like, oh shit. Okay, I could do this. What is I don't have one. So I gave him my reasons why he should hire me and why I'm probably the best. And like my main reason is always I'm fearless. Why? I've worked in a lot of different industries, and I've had to teach myself a lot of different things. And I'm like a jack of all trades. And you know, a lot of people don't know that full phrase, a jack of all trades. It's actually a jack of all trades, a master of none, but a jack of all trades is better than a master of one. That's like the full saying. And so essentially, like, I know how to do a lot of things, and I know to do a lot of things very well, which I think was appealing to him, because, oh, you've run payroll, you helped build 401k plans, you've been in the muck of it. So you can definitely, at least and I've been in startups. I know the chaos of a startup. It doesn't offend me. It doesn't infuriate me. It more is just like, it like invigorates me. It fires me up, because there's so many problems to solve in a startup, where you're just like, ooh, that's shiny and new. Let me fix it. Ooh, that looks kind of fun. Oh, I've never dealt with that problem before. How do I solve that? Like I've been involved in a Series A, and I've never been involved in like the actual data room of a Series A until now. And those were, I mean, just getting it together was such a knowledge dump, and so many problems that you're trying to solve. And there are problems I had never had before, I never dealt with. Like, it's so invigorating to be in an atmosphere where you're constantly having no choice but to level up.
Yeah, that's very true. I'm curious, just to take a step back. So when you first got interested in the blockchain, you said you joined an accelerator. Was it a blockchain specific accelerator?
No, it was a startup accelerator, just because I was trying to figure out, you know, how to build a company from scratch. You know, I'd never been like the main person. I've always had ideas, but I've always, and this is just be full candor, I've always been terrified, because there's the fear of failure. There's the fear of being a woman and not being taken seriously. There is the fear of being told you're not smart enough because you don't have the right titles under your resume. There's all these different fears. A lot of them are actual, a lot of them are in my mind, but they stopped me from doing a lot of things very, very early on, for the sheer fact that I didn't believe I was capable of achieving certain things. I was capable of learning. I was capable of growing and potentially moving up the ladder with enough pounding on a wall and enough, breaking of glass doors. But to own my own company, to be the founder of a company, that was just ludicrous to me. Like, who would want to invest in me? It became a constant hurdle, because you're told you can't do these things. And here's why: investors aren't going to take you seriously. You don't have the pedigree, you don't have the title, you don't have this, you don't have that. And you begin to believe it.
Wow. So that helped you then with your confidence, essentially, to go through that process.
Working at NFT Genius has significantly helped me in terms of confidence level, in terms of being heard, being a part of the equation.
So when you went from the accelerator, so how did you actually find the job at NFT Genius then? Were you just networking with people and, oh really?
LinkedIn. I literally responded. It was not even like I intended. I didn't even know it was a crypto company when I applied. LinkedIn like sends you all the things that like you fit 99%. I was like, apply. And I just applied to like a whole like 300 just job postings. And that just so happened. It was just serendipitous. It so happened to be a crypto company, and I was teaching myself about it.
Wow, that's awesome. So you're now at NFT Genius. You've obviously like had a decent sort of career progression through all of that and got into the crypto space. I guess before we move on to your business idea and what you're building, what are your thoughts about the crypto space now? Like, how do you see it? Where do you see it going? Do you have any kind of thoughts around that?
It's so funny. I just spoke at NFT Exoverse, and they insinuated to this question a little bit. We didn't really get to touch on it the way I would have loved to, but right now we're in a crypto winter. So now's the time for anybody who has ideas to be building, growing, testing, really solidifying your idea. Because when we come out of this crypto winter, the people who survive are going to be the ones who have the businesses that move forward. And it's happened in every industry, in every business industry. It's the same trend. It's when certain industries start to kind of go down, when those builders, those ideas havers, that's when they kind of start to push themselves a little harder. They edge for a placement, a ranking in that ecosphere, and then they become the go-to. So for anybody who is actively pursuing this, now is the time. Money's tight. A lot of investors aren't investing. But now is the time to start kind of creating your business plan, start testing out your theories, start really focusing on what your niche is going to be and pursuing it. The data is there, and it's still, people are actively still buying NFTs. They're still buying cryptocurrencies. They're still building businesses. So that's not gone away. It's just how you fit within that and how you get that funding is going to be kind of like your cross to bear, essentially.
Yeah. Very, very true. So tell me about what you're building then. What's your business idea, and how did you come to the business idea, I guess, firstly, and then what are you building to? What's the problem you're solving, and what are you building to solve it?
So the business idea came from my dad has never done, in 25 years of business, this man hasn't left Web 1. He has not left Web 1. That's not even an exaggeration. He never got Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Twitter ads. He's never done any digital marketing in 25 years of business. This man has done nothing. I don't even think he's done like paper marketing. Like, it's all been word of mouth, his entire company. And they obviously, when the pandemic happened, he had tons of jobs and not enough workers, strangely enough. So he's like, can you help me maybe run some Facebook ads to kind of get people in to work in these places? And I said, sure. So I started to start to run these ads, and I'm looking at like his Google information and his Yelp information. I'm like, hey guys. They're like, yeah. I'm like, is it true that like people have to physically come to the office to pick up a check? He's like, yeah. Why? What do you mean why? I'm like, why? Like, there's direct deposit, there's like ATM cards, there's like all these things. And he's like, oh, well, we've always done it this way. We've been doing it for 25 years this way. I'm like, no. And I'm like, what are you talking about? How are you? I'm like, can people apply to your jobs online? He's like, why? What? No, they go into the office, they fill out an application. No. And I'm like having this internal millennial meltdown of like, oh my God, how are you? So I was like, okay, we need to change this, Dad. Like, let's work together and figure out how we can change this. And as we started to talk, I was like, crypto's a thing. They're going to need crypto recruiters. They're going to need people who are actively transitioning. And I go, that was the key word for us, is transitioning people from being an executive assistant or a project manager or a product manager from Sony or from the startup into crypto. And there's a learning curve. And then as we were talking back and forth, my dad's like, yeah, but I don't want it to just be crypto based and just, people who have education, because I've worked with a lot of people who are in circumstances to where they can't afford to go to college. So they get a job working in a warehouse. They get a job working in a factory. They get a lower end paying job because they have no choice but to go support their families. And I was like, that's interesting. He's like, some of these people are extremely smart and if given the opportunity to go to college, they do amazing things, but they get stuck, and that's the rest of their lives. And I'm like, we need to change that. And it's systemic.
And I guess to your earlier point, they get stuck in that loop that you were talking about, where they don't have the job title and therefore they can't get the job, and therefore they keep doing what they're doing. Yeah,
exactly. And they can never, there's a glass ceiling. Those warehouse workers, you may become a warehouse manager or even a supervisor, but you're not going to make as much as an entry-level bookkeeper. So how do we fix this problem? And what we decided was education was a key component, but how do we educate? And how do we make it so it's Web3? And how do we do all these different things? So it became like this brainstorming session of like, what do we do? How do we make the world better? Essentially, how do we leave a legacy that of helping people opposed to hindering them or just a way of making money? So we thought, well, everything's becoming automated. A lot of those warehouse workers in the next 10 to 20 years aren't going to have warehouse jobs. So what if we started educating them on how to fix, the warehouse stuff, the warehouse robot or whatever it is, that the automation? What if we started with something simple? They're still in the same genre, the same industry, but now they're translating that into an education that now still works for them. They'd probably make more as a technician fixing the automation than they would as the person packing whatever they're packing. And my dad's like, a lot of these girls are bilingual and they're brilliant, but they've never had the opportunity to be an assistant or an executive assistant or a project manager. I'm like, well, if we start them off as like an admin and then have them take courses that we would pay for until they get placed, we can very easily start to level them up to the next progression of their career. And as they're being assessed, if they get stagnant as like, I want to be this, well, your skills do work within that particular position, but you need a certificate. That certificate will show that you have the title that you need or the education you need to have this title. Let's start actively figuring out how to get people to the next level and get them the education that they need. And in most cases nowadays, it's just certificates. With advocates like Elon Musk saying you don't need college, you need certificates that specialize in what you want to do. Now is the prime opportunity to educate people and then place them in the positions. And it fits my dad's current business model of temporary employment, temp to perm or temporary employment, which is he finds people jobs. And people
this is actually the same thing that Peter Thiel says, that he was basically paying people to drop out Stanford, I think, and saying, like, come and, work on, but I'll fund whatever project you're working on if you're brilliant enough, which I thought was really interesting. Like, his whole thing was, it's just a waste of time you doing that. And I have to be honest, I think a lot of people are starting to think that way, because I think if you're even on the receiving end of recruiting people who have college degrees or MBAs, very often it's like they don't. I think you made an earlier point that if you build a business, you build skills that you just can't learn. And having an MBA just doesn't teach you the things that you learn when you're actually, at the coalface, kind of doing the building. So I think you're absolutely spot on there.
Well, banks will give you $100,000 loan to go to college, but they won't give you $100,000 loan to start a business.
There you go.
They're a risk either way. You know what I mean? So it's just where the priorities lay. So then it became, I've definitely been guilty of like changing a title on my resume to get a job, because without
you've told everybody now, it's out there.
I know. And we've all done it. Or like you said, a lot of these systems are automated. I've definitely shrunken the the description of the job and put it in my resume and made it white and like with 0.1 font, so that the automation would find the keywords, so I would at least get an interview. And I know for a fact that that's worked, because I've gotten interviews at large companies like Snapchat and like Instagram by doing that. So there was now they're gonna fix that system, that now. But the idea is to kind of take that system out of the equation, because the system doesn't work for anybody, including the company, because that's why they're like, oh, we don't have qualified candidates, or we don't have enough candidates. There's thousands of qualified candidates. They just don't have the right keywords in their resume, but that doesn't mean they're not qualified. So I was like, I've lied on my resume. I own that. My background check always clears, but like, I've lied on my resume. So how do we kind of create transparency and trust immediately? So my dad's companies always run background checks on everybody to make sure their education's accurate, to make sure their work history is accurate, to make sure there's no, arrests or anything in the past. And I was like, well, what if we put that on the blockchain? Because now you're creating trust between the person applying for the job, the person who's going to hire them from the job, and us. We're fully transparent. We're not hiding anything from you. And what if we start to also create with the educations that we're going to create, we're going to offer education. When they complete their certificate, that also goes on the blockchain. So you see, oh, they started January 2022 and they completed this in 6 months, but it's a 9-month program. They must be very motivated, but also very bright. Or it's a 2-year program and they finished it in 2 years and now they have the certificate, but they can prove that they went through the schooling process, and they get not just a diploma, but an NFT that's placed on the blockchain that doesn't go anywhere. I can't fabricate that. I can't undo that, essentially. So now we're showing full transparency with the people that we're hiring. We're also, and I don't know if many people know this, but with people who get out of prison, they don't get a lot of opportunities. So it's not that they're not intelligent, and some people just make mistakes. We all are human and we do make mistakes. So being able to show the transparency of them getting a job and holding a job down for a year and then getting an education to be able to now one up and level up, I think that's really, really, really important as well. So being able to give people opportunities that they normally wouldn't get, and having it transparent on the blockchain shows people the successes as well as the failures. Yes, we've all been fired. Not all of us have said that in an interview though, but yes, we've all been fired. There's nothing wrong with that. We place a lot of shame in quitting a job or getting fired from a job or changing jobs. This should just be based on merit. Nothing else.
I have a question for you as well. Just, I don't know whether you've got to this stage yet in terms of your ideation of this, but there's obviously been a big push in recent years with GDPR in Europe and just general kind of data protection, like the laws in California and so on, about having ownership of your own data, but also the right to be forgotten. Have you thought around that as to how you would manage that, I guess, in the context of something being on a blockchain and potentially public?
Absolutely. So with people who don't want to go through that process, they just don't get verified. So when you get into the platform, you're going to see people kind of like when you go on dating sites, they've been verified as like they are who they say they are, everything's safe, so on and so forth. We'll still run the background check. It won't be placed on the blockchain, so it's not transparent. But you just won't get a verified little emblem that says you've placed everything on the blockchain. You're totally okay with everything being transparent between you and the employer. We can send the employer, with your permission, your background check so they feel comfortable, or they may, when they hire you, run another one, which again, if they run the other one and they decide they don't want to hire you, there's nothing on the blockchain that backs up, well, hey, this was on the blockchain and it was totally fine when you were interested, but now that you run it yourself, you're telling me that I'm not hired. It will negate a lot of those issues. But the only difference is you get a little NFT that says you've been verified. And the goal would be to get that NFT on LinkedIn. So you become LinkedIn verified with LinkedIn and then verified with us. So all of your resume information on your LinkedIn has been input into our system. We've confirmed that this is accurate and you've been verified.
Okay, interesting. So what stage so the idea really is, I guess, to kind of summarize it, is you're building a blockchain based resume that includes background checks, etc. It will be available on an NFT, and that can be shared with employers who can then automatically do verification of what you say that you are and you have done what you say you're doing. Is that a good way of summarizing?
And then we'll allow you the opportunity to be placed in a job, because we are a recruitment company. We are a temporary place, so we can find jobs for you. And then once you get your education, your certificate, once you've decided to take that next step into education, once you have that certificate, we can now find you a job that levels up your life, whether it be an executive assistant becoming a project manager, a ops manager becoming an ops VP, whatever that is. Our job is to help you. Once you receive that education, our job is to help you attain your next goal. It's not just about opening the door for someone. That's just not enough anymore. We have to walk you through it, and we have to make sure that you get to your end point. And after that, what you do at your end point, that's 100% within your power. But our goal is to continuously just hold your hand and walk you through the process till you get to where you want to be in life.
Yeah. Well, that sounds fantastic. Wow. So what stage are you at with this then? So you're working on it with your dad. Is it your kind of co-founders in this project?
Yeah. So it's me and my dad right now. And obviously we're building off his existing 25-year business. So we're taking his current business national, and then we're building this platform. This platform will integrate with his business, but it can also integrate with other people's businesses.
What's his business?
He owns a temporary employment agency called Reliable Resources. And so the idea is to take his current business model and grow it nationally. And then as that's growing, I'm building this platform that will integrate. So people will start to go through the platform. So if a recruiter wants to go and say, I can't find anybody that fits this criteria, they can actually pay a fee and see all the people in our database who fit this criteria, or with the right education, with this certificate, can fit this criteria. And they can actively say, hey, I have a job for them. We're not limiting it to us just finding them jobs. We want these people to be successful. So I think as companies grow, as the workforce evolves, we have the Great Resignation. I think people are going to be more open to, oh, this person, all they need is the certificate. We'll pay for them to get the certificate. We'll hire them as a junior until they get the certificate, and then we'll move them up to this particular job title once they finish their course. It's going to help propel people in the right direction, opposed to keeping people stagnant.
That's amazing. So how are you building this? Are you building it on a specific chain, or like what's the infrastructure that you're planning on setting this up on?
So the first few things was like, I had to do the wireframes. We had, so I built the wireframes out. The next is we're looking at a few blockchains. Polygon's one of them. We're still kind of assessing in terms of what makes the most sense on what blockchain for it to be. Also, fees play a huge part in that, because we are a business and we do need to make money. So having low fees to no fees is ideal. Security is a huge component. So we want to make sure that we work with, security and things of that nature, as well as being able to get the background checks verified. So a lot of this is pairing with the right company, which I believe I've found it, to be able to run these background checks that we want to be able to now send that data to the blockchain and ping it every single time. So it makes those marks of like, yes, they've passed this level. Yes, they've passed this level. Yes, they've passed this level. And then obviously the mechanism that mints the NFT and sends it to you.
Amazing. That's really cool. So what's your roadmap then? I mean, where do you think I guess, how long do you think it'll be before this thing is up and running, or is it TBD? Like, what's your sense at this point?
So the tentative roadmap is wireframes are done. The next, we've already picked the partner. I believe it's a Canadian company. It's called Certain. And they're the ones who we're working with their API right now to see how it will work in terms of putting things on the blockchain and all the testing of their API for the background checks. The next step is to pick the blockchain. And as we're picking the blockchain, we're also going to be working with another company to build out the back end. I have a few, great people who I'd like to work with, and I have some hopefully, depending upon who we choose, they're going to be a great partner. I'm looking at VBT right now, which is Very Big Things. They built Cryptoys, and they are, they've given me a quote back in terms of doing R&D and building out this back end. I would love to have them as a partner, because they've built some amazing technology in crypto, and they're freaking powerhouses. And I've worked with them at NFT Genius, and they're just super professional and an amazing company. I also have some quotes out from some other companies, but like right now, they're at the top of my list. And hopefully by the end of 2023, we'll have an MVP. I'm sorry, at the end of 2022, we'll have an MVP going into 2023, and a platform fully developed and ready for testing by February, April of 2023.
That's great. Punchy. Very, very good. So to kind of like round this out then, I mean, you're a ball of energy, you're incredibly inspiring, and I think it's great what you're doing. The fact that you've got where you are, you've got into the crypto space, you're doing this as well as your full-time job, I think is just absolutely phenomenal. Do you have any advice and steps that you would give other female founders that think they'd like to start building Web3 companies? Are there any kind of, I guess, suggestions if you were going back and starting this again, or if you had to write somebody a instruction guide, what would you advise?
No idea is stupid. I have had a lot of stupid ideas, by the way, but none of them were stupid because they got me to this point. My methodology now is I try to take a business, like if I'm going to invest in a business, what are the questions that I have? And how would I tell someone what I'm doing? And there are some days where I'm on point and I explain my business model amazingly. And there are some days where I'm having an off day and no one understood what I was saying. And that doesn't make any sense. I always, what's the problem I'm fixing? Who is it helping? Why am I doing this? How long is it going to take me? Who would invest? Does it hurt or help people? And I start to go down that list of and then the main two is what's the problem and how are you solving it? Staples. If you look at Staples, not the company Staples, but actual Staples, they solved a problem. The problem was papers are loose. And when I click this button in this thing, it creates a mechanism that stops my papers from being loose. The simplest, most mundane things are brilliant ideas still. And it feels dumb. Whiteout. Everyone thought whiteout saved people's lives with typewriters, right? That was a game-changing technology. It's so simple. It's so mundane. No idea is stupid, especially when you know what problem you're solving.
Well, it's like Tetra Pak. I always think that every time I open a carton and like how wealthy the Tetra Pak family got. And I'm like, wow, it's quite crazy that somebody just basically did some origami on a carton. Yes. And was like, here we go. We've solved the problem.
Exactly. You know, these are all things that are super simple and they're mundane, but in a very small way, they make people's lives better and easier and more efficient. So your whole, when you're sussing out a business, you start to go through like, how am I making people's lives better? What problem am I solving? Does this make their lives easier or harder? Like if you start to flush those out and you have answers that like, oh no, this is actually making it better. It's making their day 2.5 seconds faster. It's not expensive to do it. Then you're probably stumbling upon a really great idea, and just keep moving forward. Don't let anyone ever tell you that, you know, you're not enough, because you're more than enough.
And in terms of the practical things, so like when you were looking for developers to build out your platform, what steps did you take to source them? I mean, obviously you said that the company that you're looking at, you've already worked with, but yeah, if somebody wanted to find somebody to do the development for them, where would you suggest that they start and how they go about that process?
So that's interesting question, because I've worked with like a lot of different companies and I've made a lot of mistakes. I always say, you know, I Google everything. So 99% of the things I find are on Google. I even think the person who did our front end web design, the couple that did that, I stumbled upon them because they sent me an email off of Dribbble, DRIBBBLE or something like that. And they're from Sweden. They do amazing UX UI, like hands down amazing UX UI. And it just so happens they had found me there. I've definitely been on Fiverr. I've been on Dribbble. I've been on, oh my God, there's just so many different places where I just kind of like peek. And a lot of it's Google what you're specifically trying to build. I would always say have multiple meetings. If you have anyone that you know that's tech savvy, in terms of like CIO or CTO level, or at least like a lead engineer, talk to them. And in a lot of cases, a lot of that technical talk, even though I've worked with CTOs, went whoosh over my head. So I had a good friend who's a CIO and a CTO, and I was like, can you sit on these calls and just make sure that like I'm not missing anything? I always have second and third and fourth and fifth opinions on, and people looking at my stuff, because I'm going to make a mistake, and no one's human. I mean, everyone's human. No one's perfect. So it's just
no one's human. I was like, she's been spending too much time in the metaverse.
I really have, but like everyone's human. We all make mistakes and struggle. Like I've definitely picked the wrong dev companies in the past and accidentally like sent them money and just been like, well, I'm out that money. It's, you know, just vet, find. I always say, you know, it's a crapshoot, and it is. I just got very lucky with some of the people that in this iteration of life. But always ask who their clients are. Always ask for, you know, someone from that company so you can touch base with them and ask about their experience. If they're legitimate, if they're great, and if that client actually had a good experience, they'll have no qualms giving that up to you. You know, it's just, you got to vet. You got to vet.
Yeah, that's good advice. Very good advice. Well, I wish you luck with this. It sounds amazing. I can't wait to see it when it's live. And thank you so much for your time today. It's been great chatting to you. And, you know, I hope that people benefit from all of your advice and your enthusiasm to just jump in both feet first and actually do it. I don't know if you've got any parting last thoughts you would like to share with any aspiring female founders.
Yeah, I think for every aspiring female founder, just remember that you kick ass. And no matter what anyone's ever told you or said to you, or whatever fears that keep you in your head, we all beat ourselves up in our head and think we should be better, faster, stronger. You will be better, faster, stronger tomorrow. But today you're at 100%, and that's the best you can give. And that's more than enough. Just keep taking those steps forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karisa.
You're very welcome.